Have I got the right glasses on now? Although it is already quite dark, the striking full moon generously basks her brightness from far overhead. At this time of the night, it is usual to hear the voices of teenagers who are lurking in the shadows, all of them gathering for different purposes in the nearby local park. It is cold tonight, bitterly cold. Mara rubs her gloved hands together. She's walking through the popular park alone. She passes a sign, "Keep dogs on lead." And although she feels very excited, she's also quite afraid. There are times when even her own shadow startles her. Although Mara has never been in Botanic Park at this time of night, she's still fairly familiar with its general outline. By the look on her pallid, thin face and wide-open eyes, she's possibly lost or looking for someone she knows. In order to tidy her hair, Mara spits into her hands before she simultaneously smooths downwards with both palms her unruly shoulder-length dark mane that is parted in the middle. She then nervously pushes back the waif-like strands that refuse to conform behind her ears. Mara looks back once more over her left shoulder. In the near distance, the sound of 2 or maybe 3 supermarket trolleys can be heard crashing about. In the far distance, an ambulance wails, the blue lights permeating through the smudge-like foliage. For a few moments, Mara considers how everything looks around her. It is so different in the night time. She looks at her watch before squinting, nearly 7. Directly, an unexpected flutter ripples below her rib cage. It is similar to the one she's been experiencing all day, except this one was much stronger. For a moment, Mara thinks she needs the toilet, but she doesn't want to be late. Joseph said he'd meet her by the swings at 7. Suddenly unsure which way to go, Mara remembers what Joseph had told her earlier that day on the playground. He'd repeated it twice to her. As you enter the park by the front gate, there is a path that goes right. Stay on that path. Keep going until you reach the swings. I'll meet you there. And when Mara looked at him suspiciously, he smiled before adding, "I'll be there. I'll be waiting for you." For as long as Mara can remember, boys have never been interested in her. They have rarely spoken to her unless instructed to do so. In school, Mara is often the butt of some joke or another. But Joseph Rawcliffe is different. He's thoughtful and kind. He rarely joins in with the others. He's even on occasion asked after her, following yet another unnecessary affray with someone or another along the corridor. The popular girls usually giggle when he walks past. In the last week, Joseph has spoken to Mara twice. The dreamy smile always follows. It is difficult to concentrate when he's about. Joseph is handsome. He has a tan complexion with dark features to match. His large, sincere eyes ooze trustworthiness. Joseph attends the same 10:30 Sunday service at St. Patrick's Catholic Parish on Marshside Road. He always sits on the same bench each week, 4th from the front on the left-hand side of the church, as if facing the altar. Joseph sits the closest to Mara, although Mara sits on the right-hand side of the church on the 6th bench. Mara's father sits to her right. Joseph's mother always sits between him and his older sister, Neve. On occasion, he's looked over his right shoulder towards her. He does so in order to roll his eyes upwards to make her laugh. Mara's father never notices. He rarely notices anything. A sudden scream in the distance is quickly followed by uncontrollable laughter. Mara responds quickly by looking left. She's worried she's going to be late. She's now walking a little faster. She does not want to trip nor spoil her clothes. Directly ahead, she's sure she can hear whispering, as well as some faint laughter. Mara shivers. Although she's wearing a thick coat and gloves, the freezing cold fastens itself crisp onto her cheeks and forehead. Ahead there seems to be a familiar tunnel. For a few moments, Mara hesitates. Its mouth is pitch black like a wolf's throat. Mara takes a deep breath. She knows this tunnel. It's not very long. Mara knows that as soon as she enters it, it will snake a little to the left, before she'll have sight of the outside of it. Mara thinks of Joseph and heads for the passageway. Happy Valentine's! Laughter, raucous laughter, perdifious. A freezing, dense liquid is upon Mara. She stops dead in her tracks. Some of the freezing fluid trickles through her hair, along her neck and into her dark green duffel coat. The cold pierces her all over, a knife jabbing incessantly. As she looks up, she hears the familiar laughter of at least 2 people overhead. The hilarity is deafening, overpowering. Mara's now screaming. She instinctively runs through the tunnel, only to find in the bright glow of a nearby council lamp that she's covered in blood. For a moment she looks at her hands. Mara's unaware that she has wet herself. She turns around. She's terrified, unsure of what she should do next. And when Mara looks up to where the laughter's coming from, she's astounded. Unbelievably, and above the tunnel stands Joseph, her Joseph. He's accompanied by his friend Jacob Lamb, the wolf in sheep's clothing. Jacob is holding what seems to be a bucket in his right hand. He's still laughing. His body's slightly bent forward, like he's in pain, like he has a stitch. His left hand is resting on the upper half of his leg, and he keeps flicking back his blonde quiff each time he laughs, each time he draws breath. Mara's eyes move across from Jacob to Joseph. Joseph is laughing less now. He's noticed that Mara's crying. A furious rage that has always existed somewhere deep inside suddenly takes over. Gone are the stomach spasms and the butterflies. Gone is the fear of the dark. Mara marches in the direction of the right-hand side of the tunnel, up the side of the bridge-like structure, stepping forward on a variety of unseen pastel-shaded crocus, carelessly breaking the backs of numerous snowflake plants, instinctively stepping over two bulging tree roots, thick like fat women's legs. Mara's heading straight for the culprits. As soon as Mara arrives to her final destination, she makes immediate contact with Jacob. Off he disappears from the edge of the tunnel, and immediately after, Joseph follows. For several moments later, Mara looks at them both in disbelief. They lie uncomfortably flat on their backs on the black tarmac below. Cheap mascara has now blackened her eyes and cheeks. Although she didn't watch what happened to Jacob at the time, she heard the crack of his head slamming onto a rock or stone, most likely on one of the many boulders fixed decoratively along the ascent of the other side of the tunnel. Jacob's attempt to hold on to Joseph resulted in him falling backwards too. At the same time, Mara looked down upon Joseph as he fell quickly away from her, his arms outstretched and his eyes wide open, a look of horror upon his face as he sunk into the darkness below. Subsequently, Mara descends the side of the tunnel. Both boys are still lying on their backs, neither of them moving. There is already a dark pool of blood leaking sideways from underneath Jacob's head. Feeling even colder now, Mara shivers uncontrollably. Her eyes are full of tears again. She's now aware that she's wet herself, the smell of urine potent. The sound of a car alarm, probably in the distant car park, startles her. Suddenly enlightened by the reality of it all, Mara steps backwards. Mara can hear voices nearby. She can hear laughter as well. And in that moment, it was as though time itself had frozen rigid. Right now, the park is alive once more. A dog barks repeatedly in the remote distance. The trees make a strange rustling sound as the wind picks up, whipping the nearby branches into a frenzy. Mara tries to think. She knows that if she continues to follow the path, it will take her past the swings and out through the back gates onto Balmoral Drive and straight home. She looks down at her gloved hands. Inside, the sticky liquid has gathered itself in every tip. Sickened by the feeling of it, she removes her gloves and places them into her coat pocket. Mara's shoes are wet on the inside too. She removes her thick coat, turns it inside out and pulls it over her head. From here, it is a 20-minute walk home. Her father won't be home until after 9. Darkness envelops Mara like a long-lost friend. She's shaken violently now, tears well up once more in her eyes. It does not matter that she cannot see her way ahead clearly. She's found her way home in the dark many times before.